Here's everything you need to know about Invincible Season 1 in around 10 minutes or less. The series begins with Mark Grayson, who's the son of a famous hero called Omni Man. Unlike other heroes, Omni Man isn't from this solar system, as he was born on a distant planet known as Viltrum. This futuristic world is home to a superpowered society, and from a young age, Mark was told that Viltrumites use their powers to help less developed worlds. That's why Omni Man came to Earth, because he wanted to be its protector, and at the age of 17, Mark finally gets his powers as well. Although this should have been good news, his dad seemed kind of triggered when he found out, and the next day he mentioned that their lives might be better if this had never happened. Despite that, he does still train his son, and even gives him inspiration for his hero name, Invincible. As Mark then defeats his first couple of villains, the Guardians of the Globe, Earth's #1 superhero team, receive a distress signal. This signal brings all of them to HQ, where they're ambushed by their friend Omni Man. During this battle, the Viltrumite kills the entire team one by one, but in the process nearly dies himself. These brutal murders are then investigated by the Global Defense Agency, which is a secret organization led by Ceecil with the help of his assistant Donald. Using their tech, they take care of Omni Man while he's in a coma, because at this point they didn't know that he was the killer. At the same time, the planet gets attacked by aliens from another dimension, and when Mark goes to lend a hand, he gets freaked out when a bunch of civilians are killed right in front of him. That being said, Invincible wasn't the only hero who showed up, as Teen Team arrived to help deal with the problem. This hero group is one led by Robot, who's probably the smartest character in the series, but even they couldn't defeat the Flaxans. Luckily, because the Flaxans come from a dimension where time moves faster, their army began to rapidly age before they could take over the planet. That's why they ran back to their own dimension, but Mark still felt like a failure since he froze during the mission. However, the next day he gets some friendly advice from Atom Eve, who's the most overpowered member of Teen Team. To put it simply, Eve's powers let her rearrange atoms in any way she wants, to the point where she can seemingly create something out of nothing. As a regular civilian, she goes to the same school as Mark, and although the two clearly have chemistry, Eve's boyfriend Rex is another member of Teen Team. Now, 3 days after the first Flaxan invasion, the aliens come back to Earth, having prepared for decades in their own dimension. This time though, things go a lot differently for Mark, as he kinda goes psycho when he sees that Eve is in danger, and personally beats up the Flaxan King. For a second time, the aliens are then forced to run away, and after the fight's over, we learn that Omni Man has woken up. Just for reference, Omni Man's real name is Nolan, and he claimed that the reason he was in a coma is because he was ambushed by someone in the dark who he didn't see. Understandably, Ceecil wasn't fully convinced by this explanation, and a week later, he secretly puts the Grayson family under surveillance. As a quick side note, earlier that same day, the Flaxans attacked again, and this time they'd evolved so much that Robot suggested nuking the whole city. Thankfully that wasn't needed, because with Omni Man back in action, he went to the Flaxan dimension, killed their king, and spent a long time tearing apart their whole planet. Before he was done, Nolan told them that Earth wasn't theirs to conquer in a way that implied that he wanted Earth to be taken over, but just by someone else. Anyway, following this, Ceecil was impressed by Robot's leadership during the various invasions and hires him to form a new Guardians of the Globe. After holding trials, Robot's Guardians are basically just Teen Team plus 3 new heroes, one of which is Monster Girl. Eve was also invited to join, but rejects the offer after recently finding out that Rex cheated with another member of Teen Team. As a result of this, it's hinted that Eve wanted to get closer to Mark, but by this point he'd begun a relationship with Amber. Regardless, at the GDA, Robot uses his new access to secretly release a pair of villains who were locked up in the cells below. Why would he do this? Well, the villains he released were the Mauler twins, who were basically scientists who were famous for their knowledge of cloning. Usually, when one Mauler twin dies, the remaining one will always make a perfect clone of himself so that there's always 2. Despite Robot's intellect, he just didn't have the experience to do this, and so he needed their help to create a body for himself. Up until now, pretty much everyone assumed that Robot was AI, but in reality, his name is Rudy Connors, a severely deformed human who can't survive outside his tank. By making a deal with the Maulers, they agreed to build him a new body in exchange for him passing along secret technology from the GDA. In the end, Rudy's brand new body was a clone of Rex, and he specifically chose Rex for a weird reason. To understand this reason, we have to know a little bit about Monster Girl, who's the newest member of the Guardians. Although she looks young, Monster Girl is actually 24 years old, and she only looks this young due to a curse. The curse gave her potential to turn into this powerful green monster, hence the name, but every time she transforms, her human self gets younger. Rudy could relate to this since his body also felt like a curse, given that he was a 30-year-old man looking like a newborn fetus. For that reason, he felt a certain connection to Monster Girl, and he noticed that she thought Rex was attractive. That's why Robot stole Rex's DNA and then asked the Mauler twins to create a young version that would look similar in age to his crush. Importantly though, the twins weren't able to transfer Rudy's consciousness into the clone, but what they could do is make a copy of his mind. What this means is that the real Rudy sacrificed himself so that a perfect copy of his mind could live happily inside of Rex. Yeah, I told you this was a weird situation. Now, when he introduced himself to the Guardians, everyone was freaked out, especially Rex, but Monster Girl was probably the most understanding. However, by this point in the timeline, they had much bigger things to worry about, as a lot of things had happened since the Maulers escaped. Firstly, Invincible helped with mankind's first ever visit to Mars, but during the mission, one astronaut secretly got replaced by a shape-shifting Martian. Meanwhile, the real version of this astronaut was left on the Red Planet and had been infected by a mind-controlling parasite. Secondly, back on Earth, the Guardians defeated a mafia boss known as Machine Head, but in the process they all nearly got wiped out. This is because Machine Head hired Battle Beast to protect him, who's an alien with strength on a similar level to Omni Man. In reality, Battle Beast could have easily killed the Guardians and Invincible, and the only reason he didn't is because they were so weak that in his culture there wouldn't be any honor in killing them. Finally, another thing that changed was that Nolan's wife Debbie and Ceecil both realized that Omni Man murdered the Guardians. As the GDA then tries to apprehend him, Nolan kills Donald as he then goes on a rampage trying to find Mark. Throughout the series, Ceecil had been keeping a close eye on anything that might defeat a Viltrumite, including these cyborgs that nearly beat Mark and this kaiju that gave Omni Man a hard time. To stop Nolan, the GDA used both these monsters against him while having the new Guardians on standby just in case nothing else worked. At this point, Invincible had no idea his dad was evil, and so he helped Omni Man beat the kaiju while the rest of the world watched on TV. However, it was during this fight that Nolan was attacked by another superhero called the Immortal, who, as the name suggests, can live forever. In episode 1, the Immortal was one of the Guardians that Nolan killed, and as he was trying to get revenge, Omni Man crushed him for the second time. Mark was obviously super confused by this. He even thought that someone was controlling his dad, forcing Nolan to reveal the truth about his backstory. Generations ago, the planet Viltrum had a civil war in which half of its population was massacred. The surviving 50% were the strongest Viltrumites alive, and they decided to conquer the rest of the galaxy. Not long after this, thousands of planets were under Viltrumite control, but after a while their army wasn't big enough to keep expanding. To solve this, they created a new program in which one trusted Viltrumite would weaken one world. In this way, the soldier would learn about the planet and become a member of society, but also make sure the planet never gets too strong to resist a future Viltrumite invasion. For Nolan, he just got way too comfortable with life on Earth, and it was only when Mark got his powers that he remembered what he came here to do. That's why he killed the Guardians to weaken Earth's defenses, and it's why in this scene he tries to recruit Invincible to join the Viltrum Empire. Understandably, his half-human son didn't want to do that, and in the beatdown that followed, Nolan destroyed half of Chicago, a cruise ship, and this village full of people. His goal in doing this was to show Mark that human lives mean nothing, in the hope that his son would fully embrace his Viltrumite side. That said, Invincible plays his Uno reverse card and reminds his dad of the human side that he developed while being on Earth. Conflicted between his love for his family and his loyalty to Viltrum, Omni Man tearfully runs away, flying out of the solar system and into deep space. Following that, the new Guardians help the survivors in Chicago, while Mark spends 2 weeks recovering from his injuries. After arriving home, Mark then gets back together with his girlfriend Amber after she previously dumped him for his constant lying. For most of their relationship, he didn't tell her he was a superhero, and he was always disappearing without telling her the real reason. That said, she was willing to give him a second chance, and in this scene they go out to eat with Mark's friends. During this meal, Invincible gets an urgent call from Ceecil about someone flying towards Earth from outside the solar system. Luckily, this wasn't Omni Man or any other Viltrumite, but instead it was Alan the Alien. Alan works for the Coalition of Planets, which as far as we know is the only organization that's trying to fight back against the Viltrum Empire. A long time ago, Alan's home planet was actually destroyed by the Viltrumites, and after hearing about Omni Man abandoning his post, he warns Mark that more Viltrumites will come. The season then ends with a montage of various threats, and the most interesting ones were the Flaxans planning their revenge, Mars being completely taken over by parasites, the Maulers being locked up again by the GDA, and finally Ceecil overseeing the creation of a new army of cyborgs. Ceecil's hope was that following the failed attempt to take down Omni Man, these new and improved cyborgs might be able to kill a Viltrumite. With that said, that was Invincible Season 1 in 10 minutes, and if you liked it, please drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video about Season 2. Until the next one, peace out.